Hello, and welcome to Bespoke Unit. My name is Rafael, and in this video, I'm going to be doing an in-depth review of the Seiko 5 Sports SBSA005. Now, the SBSA005, as you can see, is marked by its steel case, black bezel insert, black dial, and perhaps most importantly to some collectors, the fact that the watch is made entirely in Japan. Anyways, I'm going to be going over all those details and much more in this video. Let's get started. And here we are with the Seiko 5 Sports SBSA005. You can see it here on my wrist. Wears very well, even though it's a larger watch, or a larger watch than I would usually wear. But again, the bracelet makes it, evens out the proportions significantly. Aside from being a very comfortable bracelet, very sturdy, I think it adds a lot to the attractiveness of this piece. Let's go ahead and get a closer look. Now, as far as dimensions, this is going to be, at least on paper, 42.5 millimeters. That's pretty much what I have here, maybe a little less just because I can't go straight across the case. Lug to lug is 46. Again, kind of a larger watch, but it doesn't really wear like it. Thickness is 13.4 millimeters. That sounds about right. And lastly, the strap size is gonna be, should be 22, and not should be, but it is 22. Just hard to get it to catch there, but yeah, so plenty of strap options out there. And I always say, not that you'd want to change this bracelet because it's very nice, and I'll get into it in a little bit, but let's continue on the case. You can see here the traditional kind of contrasting finishes that Seiko does for the SKXs, or that they did for the SKXs. You can see I have an SKX007, which we've also reviewed here on the channel. This, the one in my right hand, the SBSA005, essentially replaced, or the Seiko 5 Sports lines replaced what used to be the beloved SKX model line, and I think they've done a great job. We'll be doing a comparison video. There's an individual review of the SKX007 here on my left hand, and we'll also be doing a more direct comparison. I just wanted to kind of have a show a quick before and after. So again, you do have the contrasting finishes brushed on top of the lugs and polished here on the sides of the case, throughout the sides of the case. That's also something that continues onto the bracelet. You can see the sides are polished, top is brushed, and again, on the clasp. So certainly very, very planned, very organized, I think, and I think it looks great. There's one thing, one detail on the case that I do like to point out a lot. There's this slight bevel here, or an edge, kind of a different facet, which isn't really the flank and it really isn't the top. It is polished, so it blends in quite nicely. But when you look at it from the top, it just adds a bit of detail there to the case, kind of rounds it out. You get a little bit of light reflecting off of it, so it looks great. I think it's a very, very critical detail, very simple, obviously small. It makes a very big difference for the rest of the watch. Now our diver's bezel here, it is unidirectional. Doesn't go the other way. Do have some knurling that helps you get a better grip on it. Our insert here is going to be metal, black, with the contrasting markings in a silver metallic print, which we'll see once more within the dial. There is a difference here. When it was upgraded, you can see that the SKX here did have a pip there at the 12 index, or at the top of the bezel. Not present here anymore, but not that big of a deal, at least to me. The crystal on the SBSA is Hardlex, so that's a scratch resistant and shatterproof material from Seiko. It's proprietary to them, I believe. Gets the job done very, very well. And there is a channel, something I like to point out. There is a bit of a space there between the crystal and the bezel, which I think, especially when you catch it at an angle, just reflects light differently and adds a bit of texture, let's say. And it's simple, but looks great. Now moving on to the dial, I mentioned the silver print on black background. You can see that's still present here on the inside, the minute track there, what's called the rehot. obviously the brand marquee there and this print and the print at the bottom of the dial, which I'll get to in a second, made in Japan, also silver on a black background. Now our indices here are polished, what looks to be steel, so a nice reflection of light and a nice contrast from the dial in certain angles. Maintain legibility, very, very clear. Inside the indices, and you can already see it lighting up when I even just wave my hand over it, is what Seiko calls LumiBrite. That's the luminous material inside the indices as well as in the hands. Incredibly effective. I'm only kind of providing some slight shade here, and you can see it lights up, and this is literally just from the light that's coming through the window here, so very, very effective again. Hands at center are polished steel, nice and shiny. The second hand is a dual color, so our back side is black with that lollipop, I think some would call it, little pip of lume, and then obviously the indication side is silver for a very, very nice contrast. Now you saw made in Japan at the bottom of the dial there, and that's because this reference, the SBSA005, is the entire piece is made in Japan. You're likely wondering, first, is it available made not in Japan? And yes, it is. And what are the differences? Not very many. There's really the printing there. The style is all the same. The movement is exactly the same, except the movement's also made in Japan. You may have already noted that the day there is in a different language, or at least it's not English, and that's because it's in Japanese. And all the made in Japan watches have two languages, English and Japanese, on the date. And not just, this isn't just something for the Japanese models, it's really all the Seiko 5 sports watches. The Saturdays are generally in blue, and Sunday is in red. But outside of the printing and outside of the secondary language being Japanese, there's really no more noticeable differences. The performance of the movement is the same, quality of the piece is exactly the same. So unless you're a collector who prefers, for very particular reasons, prefers a Japanese manufacturer watch to be, or to know that it's made entirely in Japan, it's these kinds of picky things that watch collectors kind of swoon over. Personally, I don't really mind. It's nice, but there's a price to be paid, price premium there for the Japanese version, I believe. So it depends on your budget and how much you actually care about where the watch was made. Now the bracelet, again, I was mentioning, it's a very sturdy, very comfortable. You can see there's a slight taper from the case to the bottom of the bracelet. It does have some play in it, and this is not from wear, this is how it came from the factory. And that's because this makes it more comfortable to wear. The bracelet is super stiff, it's not really flexible like this, it doesn't flow, kind of just like feels very solid on your wrist, and that's highly, or at least in my opinion, my experience, it's very, very uncomfortable. Moving on to one thing, these are pins, even though they kind of look like screws here, so you need a little mallet if you're going to change the bracelet size, take out a link. If you've never done it, I highly recommend getting a local watchmaker or go to a local jewelry store, and they'll do it. They'll likely be able to do it for you. Just because you're likely to scratch up the bracelet if you're just learning. If you don't mind some scratches, again, the bracelet is going to get scratched just from regular wear, then I say go for it. And that's really probably the best way to learn, is doing it and often screwing it up. But anyways, you can see we do have this fold over double button deployant clasp, which I think is very nice. I do like to show how I don't have the folding part on, and I'm kind of forcing it. I don't want to force it too much because I probably bend or break it, but you can see that it really doesn't come apart. Even pressing just one button, it's not coming apart. You got to go both. So it's a very, very secure clasp, and again, following the same finishing from the case through the bracelet and onto the clasp, and nice Seiko branding there. Lastly, the movement. This is going to be the 4R36, which we can now see through the case back, because that wasn't something that one could do with the past, the watch that this SBSA005 replaced. And this is the 4R36 Seiko movement. You can see the rotor there. spinning as I move the watch, and that's what actually winds it. That's what gives it the automatic function. This is a 41-hour power reserve piece or caliber, 40 plus 45 minus 35 seconds in accuracy. So quite accurate, bit of a workhorse movement, I think, in a lot of, in a very big sense. You can see, I'm trying to catch it in the light. There is some nice finishing, so you can tell that Seiko at least spent a little bit of time trying to make the movement look nice, knowing that it was going to be visible. Now, this movement also allows us to do one thing, or a couple of things, let's say. First of all, the watch doesn't have a screw down crown, so you can see that this rotates freely in what I call position 0. Now, what it does have is, hopefully I'm picking that up on the mic, and that's that it has hand winding function. So if the watch has been sitting for a while, pick it up, you want to set it, you can wind it, set it, and then run out. That's not something you could have done with the previous SKX. So you heard that was clockwise winding, clockwise turning the crown, winds it, counterclockwise just spins freely. It's a very, very convenient feature. That means that the water resistance is only 100 meters, and you'll see that indicated here on the crystal in the back. Trying to see water resistance 10 bar, that's 100 meters, more than 300 feet deep. So again, very respectable diver, especially at this price. I think it looks great. We've got the updated movement, and it's really hard to go wrong with the SBSA005. There you have it. That's our review of the Seiko 5 Sports SBSA005. Now, if you have any questions or comments, make sure to leave them in the section below. If you're looking for pricing, check the links in the description. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more wristwatch and men's lifestyle content. Once more, I'm Rafael. This is Bespoke Unit. Thanks for watching.